So say goodnight to the bad guy.
You looking at the bad guy, bad guy. This the last time that you ever see a bad guy like me. You don't have the guts to be who you wanna be.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Honor Among Thieves podcast. Of course, your host is always Nelson Rodriguez Jr., producer, director, editor, all that stuff. Today, I have a very, very, very special guest. Mr. Bick is in the house. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm happy to be here.
Happy to have you.
Two happy people.
So it's interesting to meet the father of Ian Bick. It's it's a pleasure to meet you and be able to hang around you the past few days. You're a lovely person.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And just me personally, I don't know if you know, but I'll tell you. So I met Ian about a year ago when I was on his show, and we've become good friends ever since. He's been a very good influence on me. He's taught me a lot about what I was lacking in podcasting, and he's helped me out a lot. He's helped me grow my brand. So your son is an amazing person. He's a good friend and an even better man.
Well, it's good to hear.
Definitely. You did a good job.
Well, it was myself and my wife.
Oh, okay.
It was a dual effort.
Dual effort. Very important. Yeah. Okay. So, Mr. Bick, originally you're from Manhattan?
No, I'm actually from Coney Island in Brooklyn.
Oh, okay.
I grew up there, spent my childhood there. I lived there personally till I graduated from college. Then I took an apartment in an area on Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn.
Okay.
You know, I lived there for a while. Then I moved to Manhattan.
Okay.
You know, so that's where I grew up. My father was an attorney. My mother was a housewife. My sister wound up being a doctor. And I was the black sheep of the family, doing what I wanted to do.
Okay. So you always wanted to work in the culinary industry. That was
what happened is that I always wanted to do cooking from the time I was 10.
Okay.
I used to watch cooking shows. My friends were watching cartoons. I was watching cooking shows.
Okay.
You know, so I always wanted to do that. When I graduated from high school, I said to my dad I wanted to go to culinary school. He said, you can do anything you want after you go to college. It was good advice.
Right.
Because after I went to college, the Vietnam War was in full force, and I certainly wasn't going to go there.
Yeah.
So I was able to get a job in New York City as a teacher and get a deferment.
Okay. Important.
So that was it. So that's how I spent the war years. But I was always cooking. If I wasn't cooking with friends, I was cooking for people. So cooking has always been my outlet. You know, so that for me, that was my saving grace. If anything was getting fucked up, I would go cook something.
And you feel better.
Oh, yeah. To this day, it's the same way, you know.
Food, it's interesting because that is something where, like, if you're having a bad day, someone cooks you a good hot meal, the day's better all of a sudden, you know?
Yeah. It's something homey about it. You know, when I cook for somebody, I'm sharing love. That's what it amounts to. Whether it's for my family, for my friends, or professionally, the same amount of effort and passion goes into it, you know, but that's it. But we're here to talk about how I felt about Ian.
Yeah, yeah. So I know you had kids later in life, so that's pretty cool. I don't meet many people who had kids in their 50s.
I was actually 49.
49, okay.
I said to my wife, if you wanted to have a kid, my wife's much younger than I am.
Okay.
She's 15 years younger than me.
Okay.
So I said to my wife, if you want to have a kid, got to have it before I'm 50.
Okay, so she waited until...
So that was it. So 49, you know, Ian was born in, I think I was 49 and a half or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was it. And, you know, we had that. Then we had Skylar a couple of years later, you know. So, and I said to her, I don't want any more kids because, you know, I want to be young enough and healthy enough
To enjoy your kids,
to
of course.
enjoy them. And that was my plan. My plan was to make sure I was around. And
Of
I
course.
even moved my business from Manhattan to Connecticut when Ian was like 2 or something like that.
So you could be around and
So I
and
could
like,
be around. I could be helpful. I was able to, my kitchen was close by. If I had to get home for some reason for the kids or do something,
you could.
I mean,
right?
when they were at school age, I would drive them to school. I liked driving to school and dropping them off. And that was something. I was always very close to my kids. To this day, I'm very close to my kids.
Did so obviously being a business owner was a bit more flexible, so you were able to be around the kids a lot more.
Yeah, because it was my own business.
Right.
I was able to do that. If it wasn't that way, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Do you think being an entrepreneur influenced Ian?
Definitely.
Okay.
I think my personality introduced Ian. My wife always says, Ian's your kid. I said, what about Skylar? He's not my kid.
Right, exactly.
But Ian Ian watched me put in the hours day in and day out. And he also watched me and realized that family was important. So that's who he is.
Right.
And that's why he works as hard as he works.
Yeah, he's an absolute animal. I mean, at first, if you don't know somebody, it's like, man, how are they doing it? But after spending some time around Ian, becoming good friends with him, it's more. You don't have to ask why he's doing as well as he's doing. It's
he's a hard worker.
He works incredibly hard.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if someone was to tell Ian he can't do it, that's the biggest mistake. Because then he would do it.
Just to say that he could, right?
Yeah. Just that.
Yeah, he's and that's another thing. Like when people kind of like you get to this point in life where opportunities kind of come to you, you don't really have to go and chase them anymore. But again, it's because he's worked for them. Like he's put in the work and he's built something worth admiring and worth like being associated with. So to me, it makes sense why he's getting all these opportunities now. But average people they always make excuses and it's like, oh yeah, he's lucky, and no, he's not lucky. He's worked incredibly hard.
When you think about what Ian's story is and where he is today,
right?
It's a major success.
100%.
And it's all due to his effort.
100%.
I mean, when Ian got in trouble when he first approached me, it was already too late for me to help him. I did the best I can.
Right.
I could at the point, but it was really too late. He was
knee deep.
He was too deep. And even when I was helping him at the nightclub, Tuxedo Junction, at night, I was like the adult to be around.
Right.
So that the town people weren't jumping all over him.
Right.
But that was already too late from his, I guess, his legal problems.
Right.
And that was it.
Well, with Ian, so Ian is another reason Ian is really interesting is because he kind of started really like his professional career started early. He was a teenager, right? When he opened the nightclub and got into all that, like he was like at 18.
I think he was a junior
in high school.
Wow. When he first started to do events. See, Ian also started to work for me when he was 12.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So he saw events that were going on. I'm trying to figure out how old he was or remember. My friends were filming a documentary, and he went down with me to watch all this and see how it was organized. And Ian's a great observer. So he takes it all in, and his memory's almost photographic in the things he does. But Ian, I realized that Ian was different when one day I was doing the film festival up here, and I needed a person to open up an event for me at the Palace Theater. And he said, I could do that. I said, you're 12 years old. He goes, no, I could do it, Dad. Trust me. I had staff there. So I said, okay, you know how to set up the bar. You know how to do everything. He said, I've always watched you. So he went down there. I did this VIP party. And then I got to the party that he was running, everything was running smoothly, and this police guy would come over to me and said, "Is that your son?" I said, "Yeah, why?" I was very skeptical.
Thinking he got in trouble or something.
Or something. So he did something. So he said, "No," he said, "he doesn't go to public school, does he?" I said, "Yeah, he does." He said, "He must get in a lot of trouble because he directs people who are much older than he is to get things done." I said, "Yeah, he does have some problems." But it was all about him questioning things.
Right.
He and his brother both went to private schools at the beginning, and it taught them to be independent thinkers. And then when they moved on to public schools, it was a problem. Why do you have your hoodie on if you're outside? We don't know who you are. Well, if you don't know who I am, how come you're calling my name?
Exactly.
So you must know something. The rule is stupid.
It is.
So we always questioned that. And, he just progressed as he was going along. And he was always interested in having events. He always liked that.
Yeah, the public school system is definitely a system to control us. It's not really a system to teach you how to independently think for yourself. And being the son of an entrepreneur who's and doing things differently than most people do already, that's already like he's already an outcast because he's already learning how to think differently.
Yeah.
So
being an entrepreneur in anything is risky. It's a leap of faith.
Right.
So it's a difficult thing. And Ian understands that.
Right. So Ian gets into events just junior year of high school. He starts off as a promoter?
He starts off as a promoter.
Okay.
He approached this guy, and he said he wanted to do, I guess, teen nights.
Okay.
And the guy said, everybody does teen nights. They're not very successful.
Right.
Well, Ian, I think he did 1,000, 1,500 kids.
Wow.
Came to his teen night. And then the guy goes, "Oh, this is a little bit different." Because Ian handed out promotional slips.
Right.
And he was really promoting.
He was working. Yeah.
He worked it. That's the only way he knew. I'm going to work it, and I'm going to do it. And kids came. And as that got better, he would come home with thousands of dollars. And I tell him, you have to have a policeman follow you home. You have all this cash. Comes home with a gym bag with $10,000 in it.
Everybody's going to think you're a drug dealer.
Yeah. That's what I was worried about. Or other kids would just rip him off one night.
Yeah, exactly.
Knowing he's walking home. So anyway, it progressed from there. And then his story's out there, how he got in trouble, made mistakes, did all kinds of things.
Right. So you were completely. So let me see if I can walk through. So he starts off as a promoter routine night, does very well, starts making all this cash. When is it that he transitions from just being a promoter to like actually being involved in the club? Like
that was much later.
Okay.
Before he did that, he was he went from teen nights to promoting some, I guess, some rapper at WestCon.
Right. Okay.
And then he went from there. That wasn't so successful. But he had investors.
Right.
So he told them that they were successful because he didn't want to be embarrassed.
Right, of course.
All right? So then people invested more in. So he paid back those guys with the money he got there. But the bigger events failed.
Right.
And he didn't know how to deal with it to his friends and just tell them. He lost money.
Right.
So that's got him into trouble.
Which would have been okay in retrospect, but the fact that he kept digging himself into the hole trying to fix things, which it didn't come from a bad place because he was just trying to fix the situation.
Right.
But
He had no money. He kept losing. He lost all his money. He was living home. I was buying food for him so he could eat.
It's crazy.
And then he wound up being a little sketchy about what happened. He had the front of Tuxedo Junction for a while, and then he convinced the guy to open up the whole back. And that's when he got into events, really good events in downtown Danbury.
Okay.
And those events, had he been left alone by the authorities, he would have been paid off everybody through those events because those events started to make money. And he was able to pay people back.
He had started paying people back already.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
He was always trying to pay people back. There was never any time that he wasn't trying to pay people back. And that was the case.
It's a shame because it seems like things could have worked out, but...
Well, you know what? He's better placed now than he was.
He definitely is.
I mean, he was one stressful kid. He got fat. He was stressful, didn't sleep. I mean, he was a mess. That whole period of time made him a complete mess. You know.
So you had no idea what was going on? Like, he only approached you after he had gotten indicted?
No, what happened was that he came into my kitchen one day and he said, with his two partners, he said, "Dad, I need some money." I said, "Well, what do you need?" He said, "Could you loan me $1,500? I said, "I'll give you $1,500. And then I said, "What's going on?" And he wound up needing more than $1,500. So at that point, I gave him more money. And I said, "You got to tell me what's going on." At that particular point, it was way beyond my ability to help him out.
Right.
So the best thing to do was to get a lawyer, try to arrange to pay people back,
right,
which he did. And, you know, the story's out there, the whole
right.
thing. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I was shocked that he got in this much difficulty.
Right.
I was shocked that he didn't come to me
sooner, right?
And sooner when it was first happening, and we could have gotten actual people to help.
Yeah.
You know, but he was a kid, and he had a kid's brain, and he thought he could do everything.
Right.
And in fact, he wasn't able to.
And part of it, as a kid, I remember not wanting to approach my parents whenever I got in trouble because part of it was like, I don't want to burden my parents. I need to figure this out on my own. They have enough to deal with. So maybe it was kind of that kind of stuff too.
I don't know. It could have been. I don't know what his thoughts were. But, you know, when this all happened, I think the fact that, when the FBI got involved and started to investigate everything, we knew.
Did you find out everything before that happened?
Well, we found out. Ian told me that he had to get a lawyer, that he was approached by the state banking.
Okay.
And he was approached. He told me he got a lawyer, and then we started to figure out what he actually did, what was going on, and I got involved with him and his lawyer. I went to every meeting. I went to when he had a proffer. I went down to that, and so it was. The FBI was very, very aggressive,
as they always are,
in what they were doing, and it was kind of shocking. And also, they lied. They just lie.
That's the federal government, unfortunately.
It's a terrible thing that you're in a situation where, even if you wanted to be honest, the person across from you who's the authorities lying to you, and you have to be careful what you say because they're going to twist whatever you say.
Yep.
I mean,
how it feels. Trust me.
They had tried to use me against Ian, saying that we'll indict your father.
They've done that before.
And when they interviewed me, I just said, "Listen." They said, "How much money did you give him?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "Did you ask him to pay you back? Did you charge him interest?" I said, "When you give your kids money, do you ask them to pay you back? Do you charge them interest?" I said, "I don't know. It's my kid. I helped them out." Because they had interviewed me for almost an hour and a half in my kitchen till I finally just said, "Listen, I had enough." That was the end of it. They asked me about a lot of stuff, but it was just, trying to find something where I might lie about to get Ian deeper in trouble. But it was a shock, and when he was arrested was just completely crazy. I mean, we actually thought that our lawyer was going to walk him in if an indictment came down.
Right.
But they almost kicked down our door. 7 o'clock in the morning, they're banging on our door, even earlier. You know, all these police cars in the yard and SUVs.
Yeah.
Everybody was represented.
Sounds
The
familiar.
state, the federal government,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
you know,
Local police,
the
all that,
town, everybody was represented. And they were all in our little hallway of our house. Where's your son? Where's your son? Which one?
Mm.
You know, and he came out. My wife was yelling, let him put on some clothes, you know, let him put on shoes.
Mm.
You know, then I called the lawyer. I said, you know, they just did this. I said, where are they taking him? I'll meet you at the courthouse, you know, and then we, you know, we posted bond and he was home. But he was still running the nightclub. We were just, you know, it was a tremendously horrible impact for my wife. I'm a different person, so I was able to deal with it much better. But not once did I lose my support of Ian. I always had his back.
I can tell you that that's incredibly important through this process. Being a person who's been through the same thing that Ian has been through, just under different circumstances. Having my mother there for me, no matter what, the moral support was invaluable. She was able to really be there for me and assure me no matter what, she had my back and she cared about me and no matter what, don't worry, I'll do what I can to help you. And moral support in those situations from your family are very important.
I drove Ian to court every day. You know, I was in court every day, and when he was in prison, I drove down to Fort Dix every other weekend to visit him, or whenever I wasn't working, I drove down. You know, so I was always supportive of him. But it was, you know, it took a big toll on my family.
I would assume so.
My wife was blaming me for Ian's behavior. No. She said, you know, you have a character flaw, and he's following your footsteps. I said, I didn't go to jail. What are you talking about? Following my footsteps?
Right.
When was I in jail?
Yeah.
I said, and as far as character flaws, we're married over 20 years. You knew me when I was, and I haven't changed. I said, so let's not call names now. But, you know, I didn't know what was going to happen with our marriage or anything like that. So, and I felt badly for Skylar, our son, who was in high school at the time when Ian got arrested.
Were Ian and Skylar close?
They were brothers. You know, they have their ups and downs, but I think they're pretty close.
Did it affect Skylar too when he had to go away?
I'm sure it did. He had to deal with kids in school. You know, you have somebody goes to school with all the bad press he was getting in town. Yeah. And Skylar would go, you're his, you know, I'm sure people looked at him strangely, you know. But Skylar still has a very tight group of friends from high school. Good. Same limited number of tight friends.
So kind of walk me through, so, you know, you go court. I know Ian went to trial. How long was the trial? Do you remember?
About 2 weeks.
2 weeks? Okay. The verdict comes down. He's guilty. When does he have to end up actually going in and surrendering at like a federal prison? Do you remember?
I'm not sure. He was found guilty. I think they didn't do sentencing then.
Right. They let him go later, right?
He went home, and he was on. He wasn't on house arrest, but he was still on bond.
Right.
And then he violated whatever the judge said. Oof. All right. And at that particular point, once we got into court, the judge was pissed off and just
sent him off.
And that was it. It was kind of shocking. Yeah. At that particular point. He was just, I think he was shocked.
Mm.
You know, he didn't think that was going to happen. I mean, the judge said to him, the party's over. That's what the judge said to him. And they locked him up and took him away.
So he originally gets sentenced to how long?
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
3 years, 1 year house arrest, and 3 years probation.
Okay.
That's what it was. And he was just, you know, that's what they offered him before trial.
Right.
So it was like, how many thousands of dollars did you guys waste to put in jail a kid? I mean, hundreds of thousands of dollars. They flew out to California to interview my sister and brother-in-law because they had loaned Ian money. And then they flew them back for the trial, thinking it would be beneficial to them at the trial. And it wasn't. It was ridiculous.
Completely.
You know, so they spent a lot of money on this particular case. And if you would have seen the amount of people they had working on this case, you would have thought this was some high level,
like money laundering scheme or something.
Like millions.
Right.
I mean, the whole thing. He had to pay back $450,000. I mean, it didn't make sense.
It didn't. Yeah.
To me, community service, house arrest for a kid. 3 years in jail.
For what? He's not even a functioning member of society. He can't pay back the money he owes.
Right.
It's a waste of time. It really is.
Waste of time, waste of funds. It was that. There was more local politics putting pressure on them because they didn't like Ian for what he had been accomplishing when he was younger. I mean, they didn't like the idea that 1,500 kids would come to downtown Danbury. It was a problem for them.
All right, so originally he gets sent to a facility in Danbury, right?
No, originally gets in Rhode Island.
Wow.
He gets to a private facility in Rhode Island.
Okay.
I think we went up there 2 or 3 times. From there, he got transferred to Brooklyn, and he stayed there for just maybe a month. And then he wound up in Fort Dix, which was a low, and he should have been put in
a camp.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous to put him in a low.
I think he was put in there because I'm not sure if he had his high school diploma yet. He had to get his GED.
Right.
All right. But he was in Fort Dix, which was a bad place.
Yeah, it's very notorious in the federal system. It's crazy.
It was a very bad place. So there were lots of things that we had to do
to get him out of there.
Which I don't want to discuss.
It's all right. You don't have to.
So he was in the shoe that was part of the deal we arranged.
Right.
So he was in the shoe. And then when he finally got to be transferred, he went to Philly. And in Philly, he then was also put in the shoe. We were trying, because he was in the shoe at Fort Dix, they put him in the shoe in Philly. And this whole thing was to get him to Danbury.
Right.
Where we wanted him to serve out his term.
Right.
So he was in the shoe in Philly, and we said, we're never going to fucking go down to Philly to see him. And then he came back up finally to Danbury, and he was a general population like for 2 days until some guard recognized him and said, oh, he was dating my cousin. I was over at their house. They put him back in the shoe. And then it just went through a whole bunch of aggravating things, contacting a local congressman, doing this. Kid didn't do anything wrong. And he's spending all 6-8 months in the shoe.
In the shoe, which is torturous. Yeah.
So finally I was on the phone with Ian. I said, I'm going to just sue them. This is it. So right after we got off the phone, his supervisor came over and said, tell your father not to sue. We're going to move you. We're going to move you to a camp.
Good.
So here we think, okay,
Making some progress.
He's going to camp in upstate New York or in Allentown,
Right.
which is within 500 miles. Next thing, it's Christmas Day. We're going to go visit him Christmas Day as a family because you can only go visit him, all of us, on a Sunday or something for 3 hours. So we were going to go visit him. And what happens? The night before, I guess Christmas Eve, he calls me from Oklahoma. They had transferred him to Oklahoma.
Oklahoma.
I said, what the fuck you doing in Oklahoma? He said, they're transferring me. I said, where are you going? He said, I don't know yet. So then then he went from Oklahoma to, I don't know, another place up there.
Yeah, Oklahoma's a transfer center.
Maybe to Chicago.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That sounds about right.
He went Oklahoma to Chicago, and then he went to Wisconsin, where he wound up staying.
It's ridiculous.
Which was a good place for him, but it was not 500 miles
Very
away.
far, yeah.
You know, so I flew out there a couple of times.
Milwaukee? No.
Wisconsin, outside.
I forgot.
I don't know what town it was in. It's a small town. You fly into one of the hubs, and it was there. So I was the only one who went to visit him. But it was, you know.
How long into his sentence did he get to Wisconsin?
I think he wound up staying there a year at the most.
So he had done 3 years already?
He had done 2 years.
Wow.
All over the place.
Transferring here, shoe there. That's, jeez. All right. So he gets to Wisconsin. He has a year left. You're the only one that goes to visit him when you can, obviously, on weekends.
Yeah.
Maybe. What's it like? So is that where he's released from?
He's released from there.
Okay. What's it like when he comes home? Like when you guys, as a family, you finally get to see him again?
We were overjoyed. We were so happy he was home.
Good.
But they put us through a million. I mean, we had a phone. It took me a while to get. First, he was put in a halfway house.
Right.
So he was in a halfway house, and in order to get him home, we had to do
a house phone line.
A house phone, and every place that you have a house phone, they have call waiting or call forwarding, and you can't get it without that.
Right.
So I got a variation of different kinds of phone companies to get that in. It was just crazy.
It's crazy. Yeah, with me, when I was supposed to spend a couple hours in the halfway house and then get sent straight home on home confinement with an ankle bracelet. And what happened was they never went to inspect my house. And the home phone situation was a mess, and they just stuck me there in the halfway house for like 2 months when I was supposed to just go home. So, yeah, I'm familiar with that.
They're completely crazy.
The federal system is nuts.
Just completely crazy. And then finally, after he got a job at Whole Foods, and he was working there. I think he still had his ankle bracelet on. He got an apartment. You know, I was happy. We were happy that he was on the road to something.
Building back a life.
Yeah. He was happy. He was getting constant money, you know, and stuff like that.
Right.
So, you know, we were, but I don't think my wife has recovered from the whole thing.
Yeah, it does take I mean, coming from someone who's been through the situation, like a federal indictment it's embarrassing, it's shameful, it's so much pressure. You know, I don't wish it on my worst enemy. Honestly, it's.
Yeah, I think the pressure on the family and the overall thing was, if you're not strong, it really can affect you.
100%.
I mean, that's what it amounts to. Yeah. See, I never cared what other people thought. It's one of my character flaws.
I would say it's one of your best characteristics.
You know, I just never cared.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't care what the people in the neighborhood said. You know, it didn't matter to me.
Because he's your son.
Yeah.
Of course.
I mean, somebody would come over to me, and somebody asked me if it would have affected my business. I said, I don't know. I said, my business has ups and downs anyway. I said, people who didn't want to hire me don't hire me. People who want me hire me. They're not looking at me because of my son.
Right.
You know, they're just looking at whether I do good food for them or cater. That's what goes on. But I've had people, oh, you're the son of the jailbird. Oh, you're the father of the thief.
Right.
You know, that kind of stuff. I said, yeah.
Yeah. That's
What
awesome.
am I going to say?
Yeah.
I say, yeah.
I love it. That's awesome. So he gets out. He's working at Whole Foods. He's doing okay. You know, he's building back a life. Does he ever mention, like, Dad, I have an idea.
No,
You know, I want to do this.
he doesn't mention that.
Okay.
Not for a while. What happens is he's working at Whole Foods. He's working his way up. He's getting promotions,
Okay.
making very good money. And then one day he says, I don't want to do this my whole life. I know I can do something better. And he had this idea, which I knew nothing about. I didn't even know people could make money at doing this.
Right.
What did I know? I
Right.
said, so he said, he comes in and I said, you know what, Ian? If this is what you want to do, just go for it.
Do it.
I said, you just realize that whatever it is, it's a courageous move. In order to go out and start your own business, it's a leap of faith. It's a courageous move. You're going to have good days and bad days.
Right.
But he felt I could definitely do it. And look where he is today.
Here we are.
You know, it's unbelievable.
Do you remember what it was like for him when he was first making the transition? Like when he I don't know the whole story. So did he quit and go all in, or did he start like while he was working?
He started while he was working.
Okay.
I think he did one or two
Episodes?
videos in his car.
Oh yeah, on
Sitting
TikTok.
in his car on his phone.
Right.
One or two, and then one went viral. Then he was living in his room in our house. He then bought a whole bunch of soundproofing and nailed it all, screwed it into our walls in there, and bought a camera and a microphone and started to do his stuff right from there. And it wasn't long before that it started to
work.
Yeah. And he said, I'm going to give them notice. And he gave them notice. And that was it. Then he found some original guys who had a studio who helped him. And then he came here when he started to grow. You know, to me, it seems like the other day.
Right.
But it wasn't the other day.
It was a couple years. It was years ago already. Yeah.
But, you know, it's my wife still doesn't get the whole thing.
It's almost like
We were talking about how somebody wants him to be on this particular show.
yeah.
All right, and I was trying to explain to her what it was. She
Right.
said, I don't get.
I don't
this.
get
it. I don't even want to discuss it. I said, okay, don't discuss
That's
it.
funny.
But that's she's a different person. So she just looks at another thing that may cause stress.
Not a potential huge opportunity, right?
Right.
Yeah.
She doesn't look at that way. She's the kind of person that would work for somebody and just have a salary.
Different, yeah.
And she'd be happy with that.
Different mentality, yeah.
And that's the kind of thing.
Definitely. Yeah. So was there at any point throughout the last few years where he's been doing this where you were like, all right, I think he made it. I think he's doing good. Any one event?
There wasn't any one event, but I'm in awe of what's going on here. I mean, I come down to see what's going on, see his interview. I thought his interview, when he met Chevy Chase.
That was pretty cool, right?
Yeah, it's pretty cool. The fact that he met Sylvester Stallone,
And Mike Tyson.
Went to the Mike Tyson. I saw every Tyson and Muhammad Ali fight there was.
Wow.
But it was just amazing to me what is going on with him.
That's the power of an inspiring story. That's what it can do,
Yeah, I mean, whatever he's doing to help people, it's amazing.
That's something I really, really love about your son. I tell him, I thank him a lot for every time he helps me. He's helped me a lot. And I keep telling him the reason you're blessed and you keep doing better and you keep getting bigger opportunities is because you pay it forward. You know how far you've come. He knows what it's like to go from a federal prison to where he is, and
That's true, and he's very forgiving. Where I'm not so forgiving, but he's very forgiving, and family's important to him. His friends are important to him, and the fact is, I see the way he's generous in his giving opportunities to people.
I can vouch for that.
And it's an amazing characteristic.
It definitely is.
So I'm very proud of him, and he's come a long way from but from when he was a kid.
Definitely.
He was actually a shy kid who was picked on when he was a kid.
And now he's the host of one of the biggest prison shows online.
Who knows?
Right?
Who knows what road people take
right.
to get on, And it's all because he had the courage to make the changes, which is, I look at that and I have to, whenever he brings something to us, I'm the one that says, okay, you got to go for it.
Yep.
My wife is the one she's nervous about it because the whole thing impacted her differently than impacted me.
Right.
So.
Is there anything? This is the first time I think I have a family member of a person who's been through this and not just a person who got indicted, did time in federal prison, served their sentence, like did time, they did all that, and then they came out the other side and they're a successful human person today. So what's something like if you had to, if another kid got indicted tomorrow and his father approached you and said, Mr. Bick, I need your help. Can you just give me some pointers? What would you tell him? That the father of that other kid?
Just be there for him. It's well past blaming anything. Just be there and be supportive, and just hope your child learns from that experience and doesn't repeat it. Only stupid people repeat the same thing over and over again and expect the outcome to be different.
Yep.
But I would definitely say just support your child. It's your blood. That's who you have to do. You have to be there for them. I didn't do anything special. It was the only thing I knew how to do. I loved Ian. I love Ian. I love Skylar. This is what I do. I'm just there for them. And do I expect anything in return? No. I don't. I don't expect anything.
Boy, the world could use more fathers like you, man.
Well, I think there are plenty of fathers like me.
They don't get recognition, though, unfortunately.
I think the ones that get pointed out are the ones that are not good.
Yeah.
It's easy to point out to somebody who's not good than it is for somebody who's what you expect a parent to be. And that's what it amounts to. You expect a parent to be supportive of a child.
100%.
But, that's it. Just be supportive of your kid. I have nothing else to say as far as that's concerned. There's no advice I could give. What am I? I struggle every day. I struggle through the whole thing.
You've been through it's a unique experience that the family members of these people, experience, and I think having that experience out there and being able to listen to someone like yourself who went through that, I think it's important because there's people out there who are experiencing that, and they don't really. It's a different thing. It's a unique thing that doesn't really happen often. So
yeah, the only thing I might add to the whole thing is I was fostering independence all the time. I was almost very laissez-faire about things.
Right.
In one sense, maybe if I would have been a little more involved, asked a little more questions, it may not have happened. And I didn't do that because it wasn't my style.
Right.
But, I'm not saying be overbearing. I'm just saying, What's going on?
Right.
Can you fill me in? Maybe I can help you if you need anything.
Right.
Just know I'm here to help you if you need some. If you get in difficulties, I'm here to help you.
Right.
And that's it. But otherwise,
Mm.
that's the sum total of my knowledge.
Okay. So, Mr. Bick, I usually wrap up my show asking the same few questions. So, what do you see? What do you think is next for Ian?
Sky's the limit.
Yeah.
I mean, what's next? It's whatever thought comes into Ian's brain.
Mm.
I mean, I think he loves what he's doing now. He loves the help he's doing, but he's always looking to the next thing.
Mm.
But the podcast is where he is. It's who he is. And that's what I think.
I love that. How do you think he's going to be remembered?
Him? The turnaround kid?
The comeback kid.
The comeback kid, the turnaround kid.
Yeah.
The kid who turns shit into success.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to find the right word, but the truth is, he has a very strong center and a strong belief in yourself.
You got that? You can do anything.
Exactly. And if you don't, you don't let a bad circumstance dictate who you are your whole life, you could turn any bad circumstance into something good.
Mm.
And that's the thing. But it takes strength.
Oh, yeah.
And that's what it amounts to. It's easy to give up. Especially there are people around you. Here's the truth of the matter is that I have friends who want me to be successful, and I am successful, but they don't want me to be more successful than them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's human nature in this world.
Yep.
I'd love you to be successful. I don't want you to be more successful than Ian.
It's human nature. It's human nature.
It is what it is. That's the way human nature is.
Mm.
And
just for the record, he's got a hell of a head start on me, so I don't think I'll be able to.
I'm just joking with you now. At this particular point, I want you to be successful.
I appreciate that.
And I'm coming on here so that maybe you'll get a few more people.
Thank you.
To listen to your podcast, because it's important to help people.
I think so too.
I mean, in my business, I donate a lot of stuff because it's important to give back.
Mm.
No matter what I have, there are people that have much less.
Mm.
So you have to give them a little help.
Right. Do you believe in redemption?
How could I not?
Right.
I believe in redemption. It's redemption. Redemption is forgiveness.
Mm.
The person who could forgive you, is the person you harmed.
Mm.
Ian's paying back the people who were harmed financially.
Right.
And does he want forgiveness from them? I think society needs to forgive him because he's already paid his debt.
Long ago.
He's already gone to prison 3 years. He's paying off his debt. I mean, there should be no record of anything
100%.
after that. I mean, at this particular point, if they looked him up, it shouldn't say he went to prison.
Right.
It shouldn't be a weight around his neck because he's paid back. It's the same thing. If I get money from a bank and I pay them back, right, I get good credit.
Yep.
And he's paying the society back.
So he should get good credit. Yeah.
He should get good credit. And credit is not being labeled a felon.
Mm.
And that goes for everybody who's gone to prison and comes back, whether they're doing what Ian does or they're a plumber or an electrician or just somebody who's hardworking and trying to put that behind them. Why should it be following them around
For their whole life.
for their whole life? They paid their debt.
Mm.
That's why the system sucks.
Yeah, you can say that again. Last question. Do you believe Ian has redeemed himself?
Absolutely. I mean, he's redeemed himself. I don't know who's done more. I mean, he's introduced me to some very cool guys who have redeemed themselves as well.
Right.
So that's a thing.
Mm.
I think Ian has. And basically, I think that Ian never, ever had any malice in anything he had done. There was no malice. There was no
Right.
get quick.
There's no evil intent.
Yeah. None of that.
Mm.
That's all.
Mr. Bick, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on.
Well, thank you.
Do you have any social media at all?
I do, but
Okay.
I don't care.
Well, typically I ask people,
All
if
right,
people
you want to go?
Yeah,
look
they want to.
Look up Some Things Fishy Catering. All right?
All right.
I'm on all the social media. You don't have to go at this or this or that.
Something fishy catering.
Just-
Got it.
Plug in Some Things Fishy Catering on your computer. You'll see what I do.
All right. All righty, guys. So that was another very, very special episode of Honor Among Thieves podcast with special guest Mr. Bick himself. Push it to the limit. The world is yours. If you're not chasing a dream, life is meaningless, guys. Catch me on the next one. Say goodnight to the bad guy.
Thank you. It was
Mr.
very
Bick,
good.
that was amazing.
I enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. So say goodnight to the bad guy.
You looking at the bad guy. This the last time that you ever see a bad guy like me. You don't have the guts to be who you wanna be.